Hi everyone and welcome to another video from my garden! Because I have a garden and I'm going to be using it. And the weather is nice and I don't feel like sitting inside, and lighting is actually better here than inside, so I see positives all around. Also, those are the bunnies. I don't think you can see how cute they are right now, but just imagine it. They're fluffy, one has droopy ears, and right now they're drinking, so you might be hearing that as well in the background. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about how my reading has been in the month of May. And I haven't been uploading videos for the past couple of weeks, and I think it kind of links into how my reading has been going. I've been feeling a bit unshelved. Is that a word? No idea. Kind of disconnected or something. But you will see that when I talk about, first off, what my audiobooking has been like, because it's been different and I've been searching and also how my physical book reading has been like. So let's start with the audiobooks. As I said, at the beginning of the month I finished listening to The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. As you might know, I've been rereading the Lord of the Rings series and this was the last installment. I was doing a vlog and I kind of forgot to film like the last section where I say, hey, I finished the book. So I should still do that. I want to do that because in that vlog I also want to show some footage of the holiday that I was on where I cycled, so I think that would be nice. As I said in those videos, I liked rereading it, although I have found that I have a lot of issues with the books. There are a lot of things that, if there wasn't the whole nostalgia thing and loving the movies, I don't think I would have gelled with the books that much, but really enjoyed rereading it. Glad that I did, because it's been on the back of my mind to reread The Lord of the Rings for a couple of years already, so glad that I did that. And then, this is where my audiobook reading has been off. I struggled for a long time to find something that I was able to listen to. Usually with audiobooks, my thoughts just latch onto the book, and then I just listen. I can drive while listening, I can cycle also when the roads aren't too busy. I can do lots of stuff while listening and I will still be concentrated on the book, and that has not been the case for the past week. So I started off listening to Creatures of Passage. Can't remember what the author name is, but it's one of the books that's been shortlisted for the Women's Prize, and I loved it. I loved the writing. The premise is that it's about a woman who is transporting souls in her car. There's at least one dead person in the truck, and she comes into contact with her great nephew who wants to find out more about how his father died, and she's kind of also thinking about death and living this detached life. And I loved the writing. There are a lot of themes of water and loved it, but I kept drifting off with my thoughts. There were many sections that I had to listen to again because I knew I was missing things. It's a book where lots is happening between the lines, and I was missing it because I was missing the lines. So I decided that I liked it so much that I think I'm going to at one point buy it or see if I can get it from the library, because it's not working on audio, but maybe on print it will. Then I started a fantasy book by Robin Hobb, the Assassin's Apprentice, I think it's called. Again, I was just not paying attention. So I figured, okay, well, rereading The Lord of the Rings works. Maybe if I listen to something that I already know, it will work. So I listened to The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. First time I read this was 4 years ago, also in audio, and I remembered a lot of the gruesome things that happened in the book. I will assume most of you will at least know what the book is about. Loved rereading this because I remembered some of the things. I remember Amir's relationship with Hassan and the stuff that happens to Hassan, and Amir later going back to save Hassan's child. That I remembered. I remember the whole kite fight competition. But what I had completely forgotten is the whole part in the book that is about Amir's relationship with his father, and how that is actually the basis for how he then treats Hassan and for all of the other things that happens. Completely missed on that, I didn't remember it. I think that because, probably I did pick up on it when I read it first, but because the other things are so they were so impactful. I remember exactly where I was, where the thing in the football stadium happens. So the relationship with his father, and I loved reading about that this time. I loved the depth that it got to the book. I remember loving it the first time, and now loving it again and really appreciating how well it's been constructed, how well it's thought of. Everything kind of has its place. There's nothing that is random. They think, why is it there? The characters feel human without being too extravagant. So I really liked rereading this, and I'm looking forward to rereading the other Khaled Hosseini books, but I'm going to sprinkle them a little bit over time because I think I'm going to love them again on a second time. So that's the other book that I finished. And then I thought, okay, apparently my audiobooking has been rereading, so I started listening to All the Light We Cannot See. Again, don't remember what the author name is, but it will be on the image here. And then that didn't work. I was listening to it, so it wasn't a problem of my attention drifting off, but I just did not care about the characters at all. So all of the Light You Cannot See is a historical fiction, and we follow two characters. One is a blind girl who initially lives in Paris, and her father is very caring of her, and he really tries to make sure that she can save herself in her seeing world. And then the Second World War breaks out, and they flee to Saint-Malo, and they are protecting a precious stone. And then we have a young German boy who is an engineer. He likes to build stuff, and he is used in the army, and he doesn't like that. And I loved seeing how the point of view of someone that is like a German kid that is not interested in the war and that doesn't like the thing that he has to do. I like that point of view, and I like the historical setting. I like seeing Saint-Malo because I went there shortly afterwards on holiday. So that's the premise of the book, and that's also kind of what I remembered it. But now, on a second time, there weren't a lot of new things. That was maybe a thing, that because with the other rereads I discovered things that I had forgotten. This time there wasn't any of that in the initial few hours that I read it, and I just didn't care about the characters. So I decided to DNF it, and to keep my initial, oh, I really like this book, intact. And now I have gone back to the fantasy of Robin Hobb, the Assassin's Apprentice, and right now it's been going okay. My attention is there. I'm interested in the characters. I'm interested where the plot is going to go. It's one of those books that is going to build up towards a lot more, and there's a whole trilogy, but I've been looking for a fantasy trilogy that I can just take my time with. So I'm gonna keep you posted how that goes. But right now I'm liking it. And the whole looking for a trilogy also ties in with another book that I've read, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. So this is one of the physical books. I think I swallowed this one in a couple of days. I had reserved it from the library and it came in, and I'm like, okay, I need to read this now. Which was good. I really like this one. So this is a modern fantasy. It won the Hugo Awards in 2016, so I think it must have come out that year, maybe the year before. And it is new fantasy that is not just about dragons and dwarves and assassins and magicians. This one is set in a world where the tectonic plates are being harsh, and every so often there is a big catastrophe, whether it be a tsunami or a volcano or an earthquake, and the whole continent is wiped out. But there are people, and this is where the fantasy come in, can't remember their names, who have a special power. They can control the earth, and there are also other things going on, other magical creatures, but those are the ones that we focus on. And they are oppressed in this world because doing this magic, I mean, they're using it to keep everyone safe, but they're still seen as bad, and babies that are born with that, if they're in a village and they get found out, they are killed. And that is one of the stories that we follow. There are three characters, I should say. One is of an older woman whose child is murdered by her husband, and that happens just at the time that one of those big apocalyptic things happen, and you kind of know that they're not going to be safe. They're going to have to try to survive in this world, but there's practically no food for a couple of centuries, probably, and at the same time she wants to take revenge. Then we've got a young child who is found out to have these powers, but she's taken in by the kind of school that wants to raise these kids up so they can control them later in the Empire. You see that whole trajectory and how the powers that are in place to control people with these powers. And then we've got the point of view of a woman who is set on a mission. She has to, besides like helping a harbor there's something obstructing them, and she has to use their power to solve that. She's also asked to have a baby with another very powerful of these people, and she discovers a lot more about how they are being used and the bad things that are in place. I really like this. The world is well crafted. I like that this is a show not tell world where in the beginning like no idea what the hell are seasons. I also love the queer rep in this. It's queer rep where it's not about LGBTQ people, but they're there because they're there. Really like that. I also know there's a good... This is modern fantasy in the sense that it's very diverse, also in its cast of characters. I know that there are a lot of characters also with different skin colors, but somehow when I read books, I don't pick up on what stuff looks like. Buildings, like planes, people, I don't pick up on big, small colors. I don't visualize that stuff. So I know it's there, but I just don't. I would not be able to tell you who has what color. I will be able to tell you like their sexuality or gender or stuff like that. So I have ordered the textbook from my library, and I hope that it was going to be just as good as this one, that it's not going to be one of those trilogies where the first one is really good because the world is set up, and then the second one, nothing happens, and then the third one is just a lot of loose ties being tightened in a way that you're like, nope, this doesn't work, and it just turns out that the author set up all of these things but didn't really know what to do with them. So I have high expectations because everybody raves about this trilogy, but if it is one of those trilogies that I just described, please tell me, because then I will stay clear of this and I will just like the first book and that will be it. Now, as to the rest of my physical book reading, one of the things that I've been struggling with is that I started off the month reading La Fortune de Rougon by Emile Zola. This is a French classic, and it's dense. It's been great because there's so many things that are set up for the rest of the series. This is a 20-book series, although you don't have to read them in order at all. And it's been great to delve into this, to take my time, to underline, to see stuff being set up, loving it, but it's been taking a while. And usually what happens when I read a book that takes me longer is that I pick up another book that is faster paced and that I will get through more quickly. So I did that, but I made a mistake, and I picked up Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I love Berenice. I heard great things about this one, and people also said that it's a faster book to get through, even if it's a huge chunker. You will get through it quickly, and somehow that translated in my head as you will finish it in a week. Not the case. Even though the content is fast to read, it's still 800 pages. So I'm still reading this. So I was kind of switching between these two bigger books, and that was not good for my... And then it's not good because I felt a bit like I was not finishing anything, and that made me not feel good, but simultaneously I figured that it's also a good thing, because one of the things that I want this year is to learn to slow down my reading and appreciate the books that I'm reading instead of just going to the next. So forcing myself to read two bigger books simultaneously and not finishing anything has been a good way to work through that. Although I'm still on the being frustrating part of the growth. This one, before I forget, I'm not done with it, so we'll have to get back to it, but it's a fantasy set in England where we have two magicians in a world where magic had disappeared, and they're kind of trying to build it up again, but they both have different ways in doing it. One is kind of what's it called? He likes to read books. A normal person. He likes to get all of his knowledge from the books and not go to the edges too much, and whereas the other one is a lot more extravagant and wants to test out things. So they are going to clash. But it's super well. The world is Susanna Clarke has done a lot of thinking about this. So they will talk about a book, and then you will have a note that will go on for 3 other pages telling you about the author of the fictional book that she's describing in this. So, but it's very funny. It's very light. There are a lot of super funny things. So I've been reading all of the notes. So it's also taking time. I have 2 other books to talk about. One that has been fitting my mood and that I was surprised by is Florida by Lauren Groff. This is a short story collection, and I kind of had decided to not read short story collections anymore because I don't enjoy them that much. But this one was the pick of my book club, so I decided to read it because I love my book club. This is a short story collection that is mostly set in Florida, and otherwise by people that live in Florida will be on holiday or something like that. And I loved the writing, and I loved the atmosphere. All of these people have first world problems. They all feel kind of detached from their lives and don't really know what they want to do. They have this thing that is not working, a thing in there. Sometimes it's just a thing for a day, sometimes it will be for their whole life. They have different things going on. I mean, I say first world problem, one of these women is homeless, so not necessarily first world problems, but one of the stories that I really appreciated is the first one where there's a woman that goes running, or at least walking every night, because it's her gateway, otherwise she yells at her kids. And then she describes stuff that she sees in her neighborhood, but paired with, this anger, and I'm just walking, but otherwise I yell. I really liked it. I love this voyeurism that you can have when you walk around a neighborhood often. That you're working through your own things, but simultaneously looking at, oh, yes, these people, I know them. And I also really like the last story. That one is about a woman who does research on Guy de Maupassant, a French classics writer from the 19th century who wrote a lot of short stories. And she goes to France to do this research and to get away from her husband a little bit and to take her kids with her because she wants them to find this love for France that she also has. And initially when she started talking about Guy de Maupassant, one of his most well-known stories is Boule de Suif, which is one of the short story collections and short stories that I have on my TBR and that I want to get to. So initially when she started talking about, yes, I also want to read this one. Maybe I should read this one directly after this one because it's a short book, and then I will have finished it. And then I will have finished another book this month. All thoughts just by her saying, oh, I'm researching Guy de Maupassant. But then, later on in the story, she talks about what an awful person Guy de Maupassant is. And I'm like, so now I've decided to unhaul that book, which is kind of good. Like the unhingedness of all of these people, them not feeling like they fit in their lives anymore, and there are also a lot of stories that talk about being a parent and not knowing if you're raising your kids right. Also love that one. That theme in general. And apparently there are a lot of snakes in Florida. That was also a thing that kept coming back, and that one I might be less enthusiastic about. But really like this one. Super surprised by it. It will stay with me, definitely. Last book is another book that took me long to read, and in this case it was the non-fiction book about the economic situation of Africa, called Dead Aid by Dambisa Moyo? No, that's not her name. This one I do want to have right, because this one is actually one that I finished. Let me look. I hope I still have it on script. Otherwise it's going to be... She's called Dambisa Moyo. No, Dambisa Moyo, sorry. I was close though. So this one, it's called Dead Aid, and it's about how aid programs and just donating money to different organizations or different countries has not been helpful, but in fact has been very unhelpful to most of the countries in Africa, mostly sub-Saharan countries. And so she criticizes that. She talks about how it's been bad on different levels, how it's been helping with corruption, but also how things that were existing and were working have now been deconstructed. And then she also gives other options as to how these different countries could maybe come out of the cycles that they're in, and how poor they are and stuff like that. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. It made me think also about how we're viewing Africa as a whole, and I really appreciated that she she was using all of these economics terms and situations, but she was explaining it in a way that for me, who does not know a lot / anything about economics, I could follow it. Like, she had good examples that were slow and that I could understand. But what I did realize, because it's not a big book, but it took me 2 months, is that I'm not interested in economics, like, whatsoever. Money, I mean, I understand that it's super privileged of me to say this, but it doesn't speak to me very much. I'd much rather read a similar book that is more about, like, social constructs, and I loved how the economic things led to corruption. That I found interesting, but just the pure, your GDP and savings and refunding. No, there was a word that was new to me that I was just not interested. Not interested. Happy I read it. And this one I read also for the Invisible Cities Project for Zambia, because Dambisa Moyo is a Zambian author. Although I'm not sure I'm going to count it for my reading around the world, because I can't say that I really learned anything about Zambia in specific, because she uses examples from different countries. But it did help me to see a little bit. I don't think I will remember many of the examples of the specific countries and see how the countries also are different, because as a European, as a Westerner, often Africa is just one big thing, and that's not the case. Countries are very different, and she did point out a lot of the ways in which they were different, which I also appreciated. So would recommend it if you're interested in economics. If you're not, stay clear. Would be my take on it. I think those are all of the books that I've read. They don't feel like a lot, but part of that is because I'm halfway through this, which means I've read 400 pages, so it would count as a book, but it's not a book yet. This one also already spent hours on it, but it also doesn't feel like I finished a book, which is a good thing, but also something that I'm working on. I will see you in my next video. I think I should stop rambling. The bunnies are still not done drinking. I don't know if they've moved throughout me being here. Usually when they drink, they're kind of in a fight, so they keep having to push one another away, and then the one will drink for a long time, and the moment he breathes, the other one will, like, push them away and then be the one that starts drinking. It's always fun to watch. The one that you can see now is Lani, is the woman. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. I'll see you in another video. Thanks for watching.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.